Edit.
Food that prepared with the scene for the nerve of our lives, and we pledge our bodies to the service. In Jesus' name,
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless America, land that I love, stand beside her and love, through the night with the light from above, from the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
All right, thank you. For our Rotarians online, I'm sorry you missed my announcement of tonight's winning lottery numbers as we kicked off the meeting. Thank goodness you're back, Carolyn, to get me off mute. Otherwise, it would have been a silent meeting. And speaking of silent meetings, I want to thank Darren Gay, Gail Cabrera, and especially Rod Brooks for pinch hitting in my absence last week. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I have the great privilege of welcoming some guests, and I'm not quite sure what the protocols are when I welcome a guest to introduce a guest, but we're thrilled to have Kent Thompson back with us today. We miss you, Kent, but Kent has brought some guests. Would you like to introduce?
Good to be back. I always appreciate the welcome that I get here. We always have short memories. I do have a couple people from Woodland Terrace. When I heard that Kimberly LeBoux was interested, I said, well, come on to the club and let me introduce you. So this is Kimberly LeBoux and Mike Jacobs. Kimberly. Permission from Concord to bring them in.
Thank you, Kimberly. Welcome. Fletcher, you also have a guest with
I
us.
do. I'm very happy to have with us today Rocio Anderson, who is the recently appointed president of the North Carolina Society of Hispanic Professionals. We had the prior president speak to us a couple of years ago, Marco Zarate. This group is focused on working with the Hispanic community to ensure educational opportunity, healthcare opportunities, and one of our new themes, which is economic mobility, economic vitality. So thank you, Rocio. Glad to have her here today.
Welcome, Rocio. Thank you, Bill, and welcome, Rocio. Thrilled to have you with us today. With that, we have a little bit of club business to cover. I heard a rumor that one of the reasons that Kent wanted to come today is the scouting the course for one of our major fundraisers coming up on Monday. Can I call on Harold Bennett to come and speak about the golf tournament?
Okay. Just for you.
So if you can hear me, the golf tournament is next Monday. So we're really excited. We've got almost a full slate of golfers signed up, as well as people who are just doing sponsorships. So we're real happy with that. We got 88 golfers right now. The weather forecast supposedly looks good, but you know how that goes. And I can attest that the course is in good conditions. And also, McGregor just got us some new golf carts, so we'll be having fun with those as well. We do have some openings still, so if you're sort of been on the fence, waiting for that moment, now's the time. We close registration Thursday at noon. So if you do want to get in, please let us know before then. I think that's got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Harold. Thank you to all of you that have been on the golf committee to plan this event. It's going to create a substantial contribution to our overall goal. You know, remember our strategic plan, our action plan goal is to raise $50,000 that we can then contribute back into the community. And this golf tournament will go a great way towards raising some of that money. So thank you for all of your great work, and everybody keep their fingers crossed for great work.
I think we were around 38 last year. It's quite a week ago. So we're closing this.
Great. So have a great day on Monday. I will be here. I will not be hitting the ball because McGregor is in great shape and they'd like to keep in great shape. I did also, before we get started with our program, I want to move quickly through this, but you all may have received a communication, as I did, about Rotary's financial commitment to provide support in Haiti. Looking back over the last couple of weeks, it certainly has been a difficult time for people in that nation between government unrest, earthquakes, and now tropical storms. And so I just encourage you to visit our website, the Rotary website. There's an opportunity to make a specific donation to help support the relief efforts that are taking place in Haiti and coordinated by Rotary. You've probably also seen some communication, and we've had some in our own club around COVID-19 protocols. And so I'll call your attention to the Rotary magazine this week, which has a cover story. You know, we pay a lot of attention on what are our protocols and how do we have a meeting, which is critical. But Rotary's doing an awful lot to try to support creating solutions to the challenges created by the pandemic. And I just want to again thank Dr. Charlie Konigsberg and David Coulter for their contributions to developing a strategy for how we can continue to meet like this, but keep everybody healthy. So that is one of the first recommended steps. Seems to be the quickest, easiest, but we'll try to move forward with that. That's it. All right. So with that, I'd like to call Dr. Bruce Howell to the podium so to introduce today's speaker.
It is with pleasure that I introduce our speaker today. I'm going to look at his resume from time to time, but I have known Scott for over 30 years. He started as I started in North Carolina. We were interested in developing North Carolina into a place where there were more jobs and places for people to work. He started with the Department, I believe, Department of Commerce, and then he went to Craven Community College, where he was in charge of their, I'll call it, work development programs to work with industry as well as with the college. Then he did such a great job there, they promoted him to the State Department, or the Department of Community Colleges. And at the Department of Community Colleges, he did such a wonderful job that they sent him back to Craven Community College as president. And from president of Craven Community College, he then became president of the North Carolina Community College system. And from there, for some reason, he went as president of the Northern Virginia Community College. And he stayed there from 2015 to 2019. At which time he then saw the light. And when Dr. Scott Rawls, when the third president of Wake Technical Community College, Dr. Scott retired, they hired Dr. Scott Rawls to come back and be president of Wake Technical Community College. Now, most of you do not realize that in North Carolina, at one time, Wilmington was the largest city in North Carolina. When I came to Wake County, Wake Tech was the 38th largest community college in the system. I think there were 52 at that time. When I left, we were in second place. We are now the largest community college with over 70,000 students. And anybody that wants to come get a job can learn how to get a job at Wake Tech. And it's responsible for 4 community college presidents that have led this college. Not since 1963, but since 1958. So with that, I give you Dr. Scott Rawls. Dr. Rawls is truly a missionary. His father was a Methodist minister.
I was one of those Methodist preacher's kids who was never going to become a Methodist preacher. I was on that other side, so, but I turned out okay, sort of. It's good to see everyone. Thank you for having me. Great to see everyone also over here on the screen. I will resist the temptation I have to walk back and forth and try to stay in place. And I was excited to hear from Bill too, that your focus on economic mobility, because that makes it a little easier for me, because that's pretty much everything we're about at Wake Tech. That's, if you had to put us into one term, that is who we are, and our unique role in this community and in this region is economic mobility. And to talk about that, I'm going to go back in history, back to the 1800s when Bruce was president at Wake Tech. Wake Tech's not that old. Bruce is, but Wake Tech's not that old. But it's, as Bruce said, we start back in 1958. The thought of Wake Tech started back in 1958. The development of Wake Tech started in 1958. And it was a time which, if you go back to the 1950s and you look at what's happening in Wake County today, in my opinion, you can trace
what's happening today all around this region back to the 1950s, and the thinking that went into this region in North Carolina and using higher education as the way for which all of us would work our way out of relative poverty. So let's go back to the 1950s when Wake Tech was, and colleges like ours, not even thought to be colleges, were just a germ of imagination starting back in the 1950s. We go back to the 1950s in North Carolina. We were the second poorest state in the nation. We had the same state motto, esse quam videre, to be rather than to sing. Our unofficial state motto was thank God for Mississippi, because all of Mississippi was poorer than we were. Our per capita income was 63% of the national average. You know, we pretty much could do one of three things for the most part. Pick tobacco, work in textile mills like my ancestors did, make furniture. That was pretty much what we knew how to do, what we made our collective money on as a state. And at that time, back in the 1950s, there was a governor named Governor Luther Hodges, known as sort of the business governor at the time. And he ran, and he had a couple of what were seen as crazy ideas, which were using higher ed as a way to propel the entire state forward in terms of economic mobility. At that time, it was economic mobility for all of us. One of those crazy ideas we know real well, which was the idea of creating a research park in the middle of a pine forest between three universities. You know, and at that time, folks thought that was kind of a pretty crazy idea. And the universities being involved in the economic growth of the region and using research and technology and science as a way to grow the economy using higher ed. The other part you don't hear about as much, and that was the idea of creating a network of what at that time were called industrial education centers across North Carolina, because what he did is he hired a young engineer named Wade Martin to come to Raleigh and sent him all throughout the Midwest and the Northeast to find out what would it take for North Carolinians to do more than tobacco, textiles, and furniture. And the message back was, well, you got to have a way to teach people how to do other things. And that was the roots of who we are, is this notion of technical education, technical training, what at that time was also as revolutionary as Research Triangle Park was creating this network of industrial education centers. And Wake Tech became one of the first at that time called Holding Industrial Education Center, eventually referred to as Holding Tech. Now, at that time, here's what to me is interesting, and I'm kind of a history geek, so you have to excuse me, you may not find this as interesting, but in Raleigh at that time, there was a house, and I would love to know where this house was. This is a legend I was told. But in Raleigh, there was a house. I like to imagine it was some Victorian house on Blunt Street. I don't know what it was, but it's someplace. And on one floor were the folks that were brought in from the three universities in the state, Carolina, Duke, to think about this Research Triangle Park. And on the other floor was this group of mostly industry folks brought in to think about how do you create this new form of education that's industrial education, what later became these industrial education training centers. And they were operating on two parts, you know, same house. And to me, that's sort of a theme that goes back to really what our success is today, is this idea of being forward thinking, cutting across sectors, working in the same house, and thinking about how we progress economic mobility economically as a community. Now, fast forward 1950s to today. Now, you can go into Raleigh now and find, to me, what is the modern day version of that house. If you go to NC State University, to the Centennial campus, there's a facility that NC State and Wake Tech jointly operate called the Biotech Education Center. It's the largest biotech training center in the eastern United States that we operate jointly. And on one floor are the community college folks, and on the other floor are the university folks. It's the modern day version of the house. It just has aseptic cleaning suites, all the biotech stuff you can imagine, and is influential today, just like we all are in the education sector, whether it's public schools, us, or universities, in making this region what it is today. Quick story. I don't know, sometime within the last year, I was trying to remember which month, but it was about sometime in the last 6 to
12 months, 10 months. The largest biotech investment in the history of the state was announced in Wake County. Fujifilm Diosynth Biotechnologies, $2 billion investment, $2 billion facility, employing almost 800 people, announced that they were going to build what will be their second facility. There are others in Mooresville and Holly Springs, which is becoming in some ways, starting to become a little bit of an epicenter for biotech in some ways. And getting to that place, several of us spent a weekend, NC State, ourselves, Biotech Center, working, pitching who we are as a region, and particularly our education assets that were, the thought process was going back to the 1950s, but what we have now has built up since that time, and it's really against Texas, you know, and our pitch to them is it's much better to be part of an ecosystem than an outpost. And look at what the ecosystem is here. And the story was, as they did, selected Wake County to build what is now going to be North America's largest biomanufacturing facility. And I go back and credit not those of us who were involved in that phone call and those conversations and were working that weekend, but those folks who were back in the 1950s who were thinking about how do you, I mean, that's where the credit goes. How do you think about taking a whole state and raising it up, but using education as that tool and that instrument? And that is ultimately who we are. And we're very much a part of that today. And you fast forward to where we are today, and it's amazing to look at where Wake County is right now. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. And just the last 8 months, year, we've had the largest biotech announcement, Fujifilm, followed by most recently Amgen, which is also located. Apple, the largest IT announcement in North Carolina history, 3 miles from the RTP campus of Wake Tech. We're proud about that. 2,000 jobs, all this growth that's going on, you know, and for not everybody, but if you had the choice between growing like that and not growing, that's what you choose. You choose to be an ecosystem. You choose to be a place where there's opportunity. And you can see it now where, you know, maybe at one time Raleigh was not even the center of North Carolina in some ways, but look at where Raleigh is now, the third fastest, the Raleigh-Cary metro region. This metro region is now the third fastest growing metro region in the United States, behind only Austin, Texas, and Fort Myers, Florida. And it is a unique place, the #2 tech town from CompTIA, the #5 biotech center. It is a different place. And I don't think it happened by accident. I think it happened by forethought and using education as a way to propel us toward the future. Now, where do we go from here? And that's something we think a lot about at Wake Tech. And it's about doubling down on our history. It is the history of economic mobility. It's also our unique history as a community college and our role as a community college to provide, as we say, equitable access to higher education. And that was another revolutionary theme of community colleges in North Carolina. After we were industrial education centers, after we were the holding industrial education center, not too long after that, we became we became a community college. And a community college in North Carolina was the idea of building on those industrial education centers, but making sure that opportunity was for everybody, not just a select few. That's why there's 58 community colleges in North Carolina, so that you're within 30 miles of a community college campus, no matter where you live in North Carolina, unless you're at Lake Mesquite or Mount Mitchell. But other than those two places, and that's why our tuition is so low, because we believe that everybody needs a shot beyond high school, whether that's welding, or biotech, bakery, or advanced analytics, whatever it may be, there should be a shot for everyone. Now, where we look to the future in Wake Tech goes back to our history, and it's all about economic mobility, as we were talking about. And if we look behind the scenes a little bit, in spite of all we can see, I mean, looking out that we see now, looking at what I was talking about before, that's also still our great challenge in Wake County. And the reason is, you know, averages can sometimes hide some of the other things that we struggle with. Just tell you a story. We talk a lot about, what you should major in, if you want to make money when you graduate from college. I graduated from college in 1986 from the University of North Carolina. The highest average salaries for the class of 1986 from the University of North Carolina that year was geography majors. I see all this strange looks. Well, that's because one of the 6 geography graduates was Michael Jordan. Averages can fool you sometimes. And while they tell a story, sometimes it's not the whole story. And that's where when we look at Wake County, that's where we see sort of that challenge as well. Because while this is a region of unbelievable prosperity and unbelievable opportunity, some still struggle to have those opportunities. In fact, when you look at Wake County, while we are top 5 in everything you want to be top 5 in, we rank closer to the bottom compared to other cities in terms of one metric of economic mobility. And that is, if you grow up poor in Wake County, our data still shows that you're more likely to stay poor than you would be if you lived in another city. And that's, for a place like this, something that we don't want. We need, and to be honest with you, if we want to keep moving forward and having the kinds of opportunities, and in talking with the Apples and talking with the Fujifilms, we're not going to be able to keep having those opportunities just by attracting people to come live here. We have to ladder people up to those opportunities and those roles. And that's how we define Wake Tech today. Is Wake Tech today is the same as Wake Tech was back when Bruce was there and back when it was called Holding Industrial Education Center, is an economic mobility engine, but what we call ourselves is the ladder college for our region. And what we mean by that is just as a difference. Duke University is a magnet for this region. It pulls people in from all over the world. Duke Medical Center, but most of the people who go to Duke go back all over the world. Now it does a huge opportunities for our region. We're just the opposite. We take as much pride in the fact that we admit 100% of everybody applies as they do, that they take 10% of everybody applies. If you look at our students, they are 75% from Wake County and the remainder from the neighboring county. They live here, they mostly grew up here, and they're going to stay here. That's not the question. The question is, what are they going to do staying here? And when you have these incredibly tall ladders that we have now, our goal is how do you ladder up into those opportunities? And to do that, we have to think a little differently. And that's what we do, calling ourselves a ladder college. And we think we kind of use phrases like ladder economics. How do you do that? And I'll just share with you real quickly as I close some practical examples. Part of that for us, though, is thinking differently as a college than Duke would have to. Our student population is going to be much more low income than others. Now, we get students from all areas, high income, low income, but on average, we're going to have more students who are lower income, working families, first generation students, and certainly Duke would, and most of the other colleges, students who struggle more. And so what we have to do is we have to work through their struggles. We have to think differently about advising and about giving them information, because they may not necessarily have a parent who is just whispering in their ear all the time what they should be doing and catching them every time they fall. They may need to know about these opportunities. That's why we're in the process of not just how do you vault through our degrees, but how do you career map those degrees? What does it mean when you get to this place? What can you make in this region? We have to think differently because, we did a survey just a couple of years ago, and 48% of our students said they had some form of housing anxiety, housing insecurity that year, meaning at some point, they weren't sure where they were going to live that year. 14% said they were homeless. That's why we just did a deal to give some of our land away to Wake County so we could have affordable housing for some of our students who will probably need to make minimum wage or a little more so they can go to Wake Tech, keep a job, get a home, but then keep rising up. That's why we last year gave away over 4,000 Food Lion gift cards when our pantries were closed on our campuses because of food. So those are ways we have to think differently. And as we start to put together our programs, when we think about laddering, it's how you ladder up to these incredible opportunity. So let me just give you a couple examples. This is where it gets very boring, and then I'll stop if you have any questions. But let's go back to biotech, biopharma. If you're interested in biopharma, how do you get started? Well, one way you get started is a very unique program we have called BioWorks. We developed it with the biotech industry. We keep refining it years ago statewide. It's a short-term accelerated program that for right now, we're offering for the next year free of charge. You can come into that program, get it, and you're guaranteed, I can tell you, unless you mess up somewhere, you're going to get a job. Well, from there, you can take that credit and you can keep going into our biopharma program. You can also start the public schools in that program. Burnham Malone, one of our career colleges, you can start the biopharma program at Burnham Malone and then finish it at Wake Tech. A lot of those students finish it while they're in high school, so they'll keep moving forward. Either way you come into a degree program, and then we marry it up to now East Carolina University, which will offer the degree completion on site. So you can either go to Greenville, but you could complete that degree at Wake Tech. And we're building a new engineering campus out in Wendell, so it's going to be one of the best facilities, or you could do it at RTP campus. And then to get the finishing, you can go to our partnership at NC State to get some of those finishing credentials or finishing skills all the way through. That's what laddering is. It means being able to start, do something quick, get a job, but it's always connected to the next thing. And then our apprenticeship programs and our other programs where we want you to be able to work and have experience at the same time you're doing that. That's why we put such an emphasis on apprenticeship in a program that's now called Wake Works. So we do that in biotech. We do that in mechatronics. We do that in IT. We do that in automotive now. Just to give you one last example, we have just opened, we'll do the ribbon cutting in spring, what will be the best, in my opinion, best automotive training center in the United States, called the Hendricks Center for Automotive Excellence. 100,000 square foot, unbelievable training center on our North Campus. But coming out of high school now, you can walk out of high school, introduce apprenticeship law, and if you enroll in an apprenticeship program, say through Ford or GM, and that's the way we set our programs up, or Audi or others, the way it's set up, your education's paid for, and you have a job, and you're going to finish that 2-year degree as a mechanic, and they're paying mechanics. I mean, if you know how to pay for your car, you can make 6 figures for some of those mechanics these days. But if you don't want to stay a mechanic long term, you want to manage the dealership, you can go to Northwood University through a partnership we have that's in Michigan, finish online, and you can do dealer management. It's laddering from the beginning, high school, skills training, degree at Wake Tech, onto a university opportunity and keep moving forward. That's what we mean by laddering. That's, I think, something that's unique to Wake Tech today and how we think about it. But I'll go back and credit Bruce Howe, and Bruce would go back and credit, the folks who thought about our system before, Luther Hodge, Martin, people back in the 1950s who thought differently about what education meant in terms of economics, and put in place in North Carolina an infrastructure of which Wake Tech is one. We're the biggest of one, but is a big piece of that. And I think is part of what continues to propel our region today. Now, not a backwater, as it may have been thought years ago, but is one of the fastest growing tech regions in the United States. And I credit those pioneers to that. And that's why I'm very glad to be back in Wake County, be back at Wake Tech and be part of this very unique school, which I sometimes say is the most comprehensive opportunity college in the United States because of the breadth of different program opportunities that it provides. So thank you for having me today. Kent knows us, so this is going to be a question because Kent has been a force on our foundation board for years. So do you envision your automotive group creating a NASCAR race car? No. I don't want them to be distracted. No, but we may have some race cars around there. Certainly with Rick Hendrick around, you're going to see some NASCAR stuff. But our one of the things we have to be careful about is focus. So. And I wouldn't be surprised that some of our folks get hired to go work at some of those NASCAR facilities someday. But our goal is really about the dealership repair opportunities that are so great here in this region.
What do you do to get your message out to kids who are in grade school or high school?
We struggle. We do. We struggle. You know, we don't spend a whole lot on advertising. I just really increased that budget, but it's still a smidgen of what we spend. Community colleges do not spend a whole lot on advertising, and when we do, it's a struggle. What we are doing though is we're really targeting what we're doing, and we're working with partnerships. I was pleased to me, the North Carolina Society of Hispanic Professionals is one of our strategic partners. You will find in our strategic plan. Other groups, we have to be everywhere, but there's some places that may need us most. And particularly in those places where students may not be as likely to move to the next level. And you can see that in the numbers in Wake County. Go back to those averages. I mean, if we look at the average college going rates in Wake County, it's tremendous. But let's look behind the average again. Let's take Michael Jordan out of the picture. You know, I think at Green Hope last year was 87%. At Southeast, it was 47%. And so what we're trying to do is embed ourselves everywhere, but particularly where we may be needed most.
And Dr. Rawls, there's a lot of progress with the workforce development groups that are very well. What would you say are the top 3 barriers to students or young people taking advantage of all that Wake Tech has now? You guys have tons of scholarships, kids that behind all that stuff.
Well, in many of our programs, the biggest gap we'll talk about is called the interest gap. So sometimes students don't really understand the nature of some jobs today. You know, you could sit behind a computer in an office doing next to nothing, but you're sitting in behind a computer and, you know, you may be dressed like you can't have a tie on that day. You feel like, you know, you may be earning $30,000, but if you go on the automotive floor at Hendrick Center, you're going to see that every one of those techs has a computer that they're rolling around everywhere. Almost every job we're training for now is a computer job. Bioprocessing, you don't like put your hands in the stuff. You're programming. Automotive, all these, you know, are very advanced technology jobs, but there's still a status thing about that. And so for us, it's overcoming the interest gap. For us, it's also overcoming the notion that, well, it's the either or. Either you go to Wake Tech or you go to State or someplace. No, you go to Wake Tech and then you go to State. Then you can keep laddering up. So overcoming that is a challenge for us. And there's so much opportunity. That's a big challenge. That's where, you know, students who walk in and see us out of high school, they don't have a clue of what biopharma is or analytics or mechatronics. And so being able to get that in front of them. So those are 3 challenges.
Oh, I got a question from you. What did Wake Tech learn during the pandemic that will influence how you provide education in the future?
Well, first, we're really resilient and pretty innovative in this. And we did a really good job. And I will credit Wake Tech before me, Steve Scott and the team that was there. Wake Tech 6 years ago put a major effort into online education. And with the county has really invested in us to have the technology, the resiliency, and the redundancy. But the biggest investment was every Wake Tech instructor. Well, when the COVID started, it was 70% of Wake Tech instructors. By the summer, though, it was 100% had been through a very rigorous, what we call certification, EPIC certification program, and had access to synchronous online. And every course we had was on the learning management system. So for us, moving virtual was much easier than others. And our faculty were very creative in the technical areas where things could not be virtual all the time to make what could be virtual when we could do it. Even welding and baking, they sent all the supplies home and you baked in your kitchen for a period of time and you come back spaced out. So we learned that we're pretty innovative and pretty resilient. I think it gave us all, students and faculty, confidence. That's why you're always going to see Wake Tech's online numbers being higher, because there's a confidence in faculty, a confidence in students that they can do it when it's appropriate. Thank you.
Dr. Rawls, thank you for speaking with us today. I have a personal reason for thanking you and your institution. Speak about laddering. About 20, 21 years old, I decided I didn't want to wait tables for the rest of my life. So I attended Wake Tech Community College, went on to ECU, went on to NC State ECU, Campbell Law. Now I'm here where I am. today.
Wake Tech success.
Yes, absolutely. This to you is a token of our appreciation, some greeting cards with art by our resident
That looks
artist.
like,
Chairman.
that may be that house.
There you go.
I just want
Briefly,
I want to tell one story about Wake Tech.
briefly.
In 1958, there was a debate in Wake County. And it was a debate between southern Wake County and northern Wake County. It was a political debate. Everything's political, guys. I don't care. Dr. Scott, Scott Rawls here is in politics up to his eyeballs. In 1958, the debate was, if we do something for northern Wake County, what do we do for southern Wake County? The hospital, Wake, where it is, it was in the boondocks in Raleigh. It was outside of Raleigh then. But that's why Wake Med is where it is. Wake Tech is in the southern part of the county because that was compromised. If the South gets something, the North's got to have something. I think both of them turned out pretty darn good.
That's definitely true. Thank you for that perspective, Bruce. And thank you, Dr. Rawls, for everything that you're doing to grow our economic engine for this area and creating access for everybody. And I look forward as we develop our economic empowerment initiatives. Sounds like we've got an opportunity to partner with some of the folks that you're impacting. So thank you. And of course, this club has historically been very well connected to Wake Tech, of course, through Dr. Powell, but also even ongoing through our scholarship sponsorship each year for observing students. So thank you very much for everything you do. All right. And thank you, Kevin, for your personal story. That was fantastic. I didn't know that when I asked you if you would thank Dr. There was an aura coming. All right, well, we've got some red letter days to celebrate here coming up. Happy birthday, Paul Wazelkevich, who I have down as a birthday yesterday. When you see Tyler Perkinson, wish him a happy birthday on Thursday. And membership anniversaries, Tamiko Faison joined us 2 years ago on Friday, August 27th. Anthony Blackman on the 28th will celebrate 20 years as a member of the Cary Rotary Club. And he was partnered with Mr. Hal Jordan, also 20 years coming up this Saturday. So congratulations. Thank you there for everything you've done to help build our club over 20 years. Personal anniversaries. And this has been the most dangerous part of the DAC-DB information. I'll just share with you. But it says here that Ron and Molly Stanton celebrated their wedding anniversary yesterday. There's a year quoted here. I'm not going to even attempt. Also yesterday, Bill and Mariel Zinnick. Happy anniversary, Bill, to you and Mariel. Howard and Patsy Johnson will celebrate their wedding anniversary on the 24th. I guess that's today. Happy anniversary. He's probably with Neil right now, picking out a gift. I can connect you, Neil, to DAC-DB so you can get his contact information. And happy anniversary to Tim and Kathy Mannix, who will celebrate their anniversary tomorrow. Congratulations. Today's the 24th. Yes, sir.
Mabel and I celebrated number 56 on Sunday, and we shared it with her sister's 90th birthday.
Hey.
And that was a true thing because her sister on her 90th birthday gave us a reception for our wedding.
Well, and 40 years later, it comes back. Well, and I think that anniversary was recognized last week. I hope. I knew it was coming up. Well, congratulations. Yes, Tim?
I just want to point out that young couple, ours was our 58th anniversary.
Well, you connect with Bill and Marielle, and he'll fill you in on their lifetime together as well, but that's just fantastic. Congratulations. All right, next week's program will be presented by David Coulter. We'll hear from Kids Notes, which celebrates and provides music education for pre-K through grade 12 students. The meal next week will be barbecue chicken with mac and cheese and cabbage. I'm not a North Carolina native, but that sounds like a North Carolina meal to me. In 2 weeks, we're back with Dr. Powell, who will bring us Paul Kane, who is the executive director of the home builders of Raleigh and Wake County. So we'll look forward to that program as well. So as we wrap up today, I want to thank you, Kent, for bringing Kimberly and Michael. You are welcome back. We love people at Woodland Terrace. We engage them as members all the time, Tom will tell you. But please, welcome. We're so pleased that you came to join us today. Hope you had an enjoyable time. Thank you, Kent, for making that happen. Rocio, thank you very much for you joining us, and Bill for making that happen. You know, seems an appropriate setting to come together. And so we're just so thrilled to have you with us. Please come back at any time. We'd love to have you as a member.
Thank you. I will come back.
Perfect. Great. So with that, I'll ask Eric Schmidt if you can lead us out, Eric, on the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do.
First, is this the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill to beneficiaries? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
That's my favorite part.